Leprechaun Origin, the Leprechaun remake. Brought to you by the WWE Studios, so you know we're in for something. After 6 other movies, this is the first Leprechaun film actually made in Ireland. And we open on the comically basic 2 people are running through the woods being chased by an unknown monster, dropping a machete in their bag, and they get eaten by velociraptors before they can make it to the pillar. Oh, my bad, this POV, apparently they were attacked by the Predator. Cutting to the actual characters, this is Sophie, her boy Ben, and their friends Jenny and David. David's played by Mark from Freddy vs. Jason. They're Americans going on a study tour of Ireland, which honestly just looks like most of Michigan. But the truck driver is spooked by the pillar, so leaves them to walk to the village. And the camera crew randomly films this redneck, who is not important for the rest of the movie. Making it to the village, of course they go to the pub and drink the obvious Guinness. And despite going all the way to Ireland, Sophie starts to think maybe this whole study trip is already a bust and maybe we should put off college. But there's an eavesdropper, Hamish, played by Gary Chalk, the legend himself. He's Canadian. So Hamish overhears them and wants to tell them more about the village, about how there's some stones in the cave, known as the Stones of the Gods, supposedly the cradle of Celtic civilization, which in reality would be in Austria. So this trip is going to go an extra day to get to the stones, so they get Hamish's son Sean to drive them. He's a total arse, but a few driving beers gets them good. Hamish reminisces about how there used to be gold in them darn hills until the mines collapsed, but the stones are still there, guys. Just don't mind my Rolex. So they make it to the cottagecore crack den they're going to spend the night at. There's like 40 locks and monsters in the grass, but that's just Ireland. The cabin doesn't have power, but they have some liquid tar, and Hamish leaves behind the Rolex as leprechaun bait. And at night, Jenny hears something, and thinks she's seen something. But damn, they actually had the lock you inside locks installed. So Jen sits by the fireplace, and a Martian rips off her earring. And we finally see the leprechaun. What the fuck is that thing? Apparently, that's our leprechaun, played by Hornswoggle from WWE. Even though his wrestling persona is the stereotypical guy in a green suit and buckled hat, for whatever reason, they decided to try something different. And we hardly see it even when it is on screen. I didn't speed that footage up or anything. Plus the gold vision, it feels like they definitely didn't want this to be a leprechaun originally. We hardly see the monster throughout the film. It's always away in quick cuts, or close-ups, POVs, the stupid gold vision, or blurry. You can tell they were embarrassed about this design. The few seconds we do get a good look at it, it just ends up looking like the Rake. Either way, the group escapes through the chimney, but David gets his leg chewed on, and it would have been really funny if he turned into a leprechaun, but of course this movie's not funny. They book it out of there to the neighbor's house, and they go into the creepy basement to look for a phone, and they find the lost and found. Also, the leprechaun is scared by the security lights from the house, but not the sunlight from the beginning of the film. Meanwhile, Sean's starting to question the system, but Hamish and his friend Ian tell him to not, because this is a good way to get rid of those damn foreigners so we can go mine the gold and have the leprechaun eat them. Meanwhile, Sophie literally finds a book open to the lore, explaining the lore, and apparently the pillars are leprechaun repellent. The Irish figure out what's going on and go to the house, but before they gets into a fight, Hamish hears a shot, so he goes to investigate, and Sean lets them escape. Turns out the foreskin monster killed Ian. David's having troubles with his busted leg, but hey, an old lady, and of course she's in on it and brings them to Hamish. So the group gets tied up with some gold around them as leprechaun bait, and yes, this is an hour into the film and they are purposely trying to keep the monster blurry and invisible. David gets some pretty nasty slashes, but it also slashed his binding, so he escapes, grabbing a different machete from the one in the beginning of the film, the freer one, and then he gets eaten. The three escape, but then Sophie, for whatever reason, wants to go back and kill the zombie, even though it would make way more sense to just leave. So the three make it back to the cabin, and they're gonna bait the monster with some gold around the chimney, and they're gonna bash his brains in. But then for whatever reason, they decide to have Jenny wait outside to push him into the chimney. But for the only time in this film the leprechaun seems intelligent, they're able to push Jenny into the chimney instead, so her friends bash her in the face instead. Well, going back and killing the zombie was a complete and utter failure, so fuck it, let's go and run again. Make sure to trip over grass, and the shaved spider monkey chases them into a car, but of course, they don't have the keys for it.
Why didn't you come back? When I fell, why didn't you come back for me?
This is like literally so not the time because the shaved spider monkey is behind you, so when they leave to go find the keys, the monster got into the truck, they ran back to the cabin again. Ben gets dragged away, and the monster is a predator again, ripping out his spine. Sean decides to betray his dad and save her, blasting at the monster and wrestling with his dad until knocking him into the basement where he makes out with the blobfish. Sophie drives away, but the monster teleports to her location. I think the lighting and editing are so fucking bad it looks like she's just a bad driver. But here comes the sun as Sophie books it, but trips over the bag from the beginning of the film and it has gold in it. But the monster is more interested in Sophie because again, this is not a leprechaun.
Fuck you, Lucky Charms!
And that is the only callback to the original film.
Fuck you, Lucky Charms.
Well, there it makes sense because it's an actual horror comedy and ties back from an earlier joke, and the frustrations of not getting the copyright to the box. Well, in the remake, it just comes out of nowhere because it's not a horror comedy, it takes itself way too serious. Either way, she makes it past the marker, there sounds like there's multiple leprechauns, but who cares, and we get 12 minutes of credits. Final body count? 8. This movie's terrible. The characters are bland, the plot's bland, the lighting, cinematography, and editing are dog water. Sean and Haymitch's actors are way too good for this film. Literally every creative decision about this film leaves me just baffled. I mean, even down to the name, it doesn't have a leprechaun in it. In Origins, this is a remake, not a prequel. Even the hand on the cover doesn't even resemble the monster. Leprechaun should have never had 6 films, but the reason it did was because Warwick David. They knew what kind of movie they were making and ran with it, silly and all. The monster in this is laughably bland and just eats people, while the original Leprechaun used magic and rhyming, actually making him an interesting threat. There's no reason they had Hornswoggle play the monster, because what little we see of the suit, it honestly could have been a full-grown person or CGI and still be disappointing. I'm definitely not the kind of person who says all remakes are bad and pointless. Good stories should be retold, even in movie form. For a new setting and a new audience, there's definitely been remakes that are way better than the originals. But this film was clearly made by a director who doesn't like the previous films, and even starring an actor who never seen or cared about the previous films.
I've never seen any of them.
Really? Still haven't?
Still. No. I'm glad. They're going to walk out going, what was the name of that other guy that played the Leprechaun?
Wow.
Leprechaun films aren't like the most sacred films in the world, but this still just feels so disrespectful. Every part of this film just feels like this was a completely different, unrelated cabin in the woods monster film, probably called Fairy or something, and then they added in a tiny bit of gold to cash in a franchise that's somewhat familiar. I hate giving ratings this low, but 0 out of 10. There's no redeeming value to this movie whatsoever. But let me know what you thought down below, as well as hitting the like button and subscribing if you're new.